It's 11:47 at night. You're in bed, but you're not sleeping. You're on your phone, scrolling through your bank account, doing math in your head. Rent is due in 4 days. There's a car insurance payment you forgot about. The electricity bill came in higher than expected. You move some numbers around. You think about what you can delay, what you can split, what you can just barely cover if nothing else goes wrong between now and Friday. You put the phone down. You pick it up again. You check one more time, as if the numbers might have changed. They haven't. And the strange thing is, you're not unemployed. You're not irresponsible. You went to work today. You went to work yesterday. You've been going to work. You're doing what you were told to do. You're earning money, paying your bills, trying to keep everything together. But somehow, the math never works out the way it should. There's always something, always a gap, always a next thing. And that feeling, that low, constant hum of financial pressure never fully goes away. Not even on payday. Especially not on payday, because payday just starts the cycle over. Most people assume this is a personal failure, that if you're struggling financially, something is wrong with how you spend, how you think, how you discipline yourself. And yes, there are people who spend recklessly, but that's not the full picture. Not even close. Because there are millions of people doing everything they were told to do, working full-time, avoiding luxury, skipping meals out, buying the store-brand version of everything, and still ending up in the same place at the end of every month. Not behind, exactly, but never ahead, never building, never breathing. And that's not a spending problem. That's a structural one. Here's what almost nobody talks about openly. The way most people interact with money is not a plan. It's a reaction. Something comes in, something goes out. You respond to whatever is most urgent. The bill with the closest due date, the expense you didn't see coming, the account that's about to overdraft.
Your entire financial life becomes a series of responses to pressure, and you never get the chance to step back and ask a more important question. Not, how do I survive this month, but why does this keep happening?
This is the trap. Not the bills, not the income, the pattern, the system you're inside of. You've been conditioned to operate in a mode of constant financial reaction, and that mode, by design, prevents you from building anything. It keeps you exactly where you are, moving, but not forward. Think about what your week actually looks like. You wake up, you go to work, you earn money. That money enters your account and almost immediately begins to leave. Rent, utilities, insurance, phone bill, groceries, transportation, maybe debt payments. By the time everything is covered, there's a thin margin left, and that margin is supposed to be your future. That margin is supposed to become your savings, your investments, your safety net, your retirement, your freedom. But it doesn't. Because that margin gets eaten by a parking ticket, a medical copay, a kid's school supplies, a broken appliance, a price increase you didn't expect, and then you're back to zero, or below it. This is what economists quietly call the cost of being poor. When you have no financial buffer, everything costs more. You pay late fees because you couldn't pay on time. You pay higher interest because your credit reflects your stress, not your character. You can't buy in bulk because you don't have enough cash at once. You take the first job available, not the best one, because you can't afford the gap between opportunities. You stay in situations, apartments, jobs, relationships that cost you more in the long run because leaving requires money you don't have. The system charges you extra for being under pressure and then uses that pressure to keep you under it. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. This doesn't only affect people on low incomes, it follows people up the ladder. There are people earning well above the median household income who feel the same way. They upgraded the apartment, the car payment went up, the lifestyle expanded because that's what income is for, right? But the structure never changed. The pattern stayed exactly the same. Money comes in, money goes out, react to pressure, survive the month, start again. The income went up, but the system didn't. And so the feeling of being stuck persists, even in a nicer house, even with a better job title, even with a closet full of things that were supposed to make it feel like progress. This is one of the deepest contradictions in modern financial life. You can work harder, earn more, and still not escape the cycle, because the cycle isn't about how much you make. It's about how your relationship with money is structured. And for most people, that structure was never designed. It was inherited, absorbed, copied from parents who were also reacting, reinforced by a culture that teaches you what to buy but never how to build. Let's slow down and look at what's actually happening beneath the surface. Because there are psychological forces at play here that most people never name. The first is the fear of poverty. Not poverty itself, the fear of it. This fear drives people to cling to any source of income, no matter how low, no matter how draining. It makes you say yes to overtime that ruins your health. It makes you avoid risk entirely. It makes you hoard small amounts of money in a checking account earning nothing, because the idea of investing feels like gambling when you've already seen what losing looks like. This fear doesn't push you forward. It pins you in place. The second is social comparison. This one is quieter and more corrosive. You look at people around you, friends, coworkers, strangers online, and you try to measure where you stand. Not by your actual financial position, but by visible signals. Their car, their vacations, their clothes. And when you feel like you're falling behind, something in you starts spending not to build, but to perform, to close the gap, to not look like you're struggling. This kind of spending doesn't register as emotional. It feels rational in the moment. It feels necessary, but it's driven entirely by fear. The fear of being seen as less than. The third is decision fatigue. When every financial choice feels high stakes, when choosing between paying one bill or another is a daily event, your brain begins to shut down its long-term planning functions. You stop thinking about next year. You stop thinking about next month. You think about today. This is a neurological response to sustained stress, and it is devastating for financial growth. You become someone who can only act on what's right in front of you, and the future becomes a blurry, abstract thing you'll deal with later. Except later never comes, because today always has another emergency. These three forces, fear, comparison, and fatigue, create a psychological environment where saving feels impossible, investing feels reckless, and planning feels pointless. And the tragic part is, the people experiencing this often blame themselves. They think they lack willpower. They think they're bad with money. They think they just need to try harder. But you cannot discipline your way out of a broken structure. Discipline inside a reactive system just means you react more efficiently. It doesn't change the direction. Now, here's where it gets more systemic. The economy you participate in is not neutral. It is designed with certain assumptions about your rent, your consumption, your debt tolerance, your need for convenience. When housing costs rise faster than wages, that's not your failure. When healthcare costs can bankrupt a family from a single unexpected event, that's not a budgeting error. When education requires debt that takes decades to repay, that's not poor planning. These are structural features of the environment you operate in, and pretending they don't affect your financial trajectory is like blaming someone for drowning in a rising tide. The system doesn't need you to fail, it just needs you to stay busy. Busy reacting, busy surviving, busy enough that you never stop long enough to look at the structure from the outside. And this is the real distinction that almost no one draws clearly enough. There are two fundamentally different ways to interact with money. One is reactive, one is leveraged, and most people spend their entire lives in the first without ever knowing the second exists. A reactive financial life looks like this. You earn, you spend, you respond to problems as they come, and your goal each month is to not fall behind. There is no system. There is no architecture. There is only survival dressed up as responsibility. A leveraged financial life looks different, not because the person earns more, but because the structure is different. In a leveraged system, money has assignments before it arrives. There's a buffer, even a small one, between income and expenses. There are assets, even modest ones, that work alongside your labor. There is a gap, deliberately maintained, between what you earn and what you spend. And that gap is not leftover money. It's the most important money you have, because that gap is what compounds. That gap is what becomes options. That gap is what eventually replaces the need to trade every hour of your life for the right to not be homeless. But here's the cold truth. Building that gap is brutally difficult when you're already inside the reactive system. Because the reactive system doesn't just take your money, it takes your attention. It takes your energy. It takes your belief that anything else is possible. When you've been surviving for years, the idea that you could build something slowly, quietly, over time feels almost naive. And so most people don't start. Not because they're lazy, not because they don't care, but because the system they're stuck inside has convinced them that reacting is all there is. This is the thing nobody says out loud at financial literacy seminars or in those cheerful budgeting apps. The problem isn't that people don't know what to do. Most people have heard of emergency funds. Most people know they should invest. Most people understand compound interest when you explain it. The problem is that knowledge means nothing inside a system that consumes every dollar and every ounce of mental bandwidth before you can act on what you know. Information without structural change is just awareness of your own trap. And the cruelest part of all of this, the part that keeps people up at 11:47 at night doing math on their phones, is the silence. Nobody talks about it. Not honestly. Not in a way that acknowledges how widespread it is. You sit across from coworkers who are doing the exact same math in their heads, and nobody says a word. You smile at family gatherings while quietly calculating whether you can afford the drive home. You perform stability because admitting financial pressure still carries shame, even though the majority of people around you are carrying the same weight. So, what does a person actually do with this? That question hangs in the air, and the honest answer is that there is no single move, no trick, no 5-step framework that dissolves a structural problem. But there is one shift that changes the trajectory more than any other, and it's not glamorous. It's not exciting. It's the decision to stop treating your financial life as a series of reactions and start treating it as a system you are building, slowly, deliberately, even painfully, one small structural change at a time. Not a budget you follow for 2 weeks and then abandon. Not a New Year's resolution. A fundamental change in how you think about what money is for. Not for consuming, not for performing, not for reacting. For building a structure that eventually, not next month, not next year, but eventually stops requiring all of your energy just to stand still. That's not inspiration. That's just the math, viewed honestly. And most people will hear this, understand it, and still not do anything differently. Not because they're weak, but because tomorrow morning the phone will buzz with another bill, another due date, another small emergency, and the system will pull them back in. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. The pressure is immediate. The payoff of structural change is invisible for months, sometimes years. And the system knows in the way that systems know things, not consciously, but mechanically, that most people will always choose to put out the fire in front of them over building something fireproof. The question isn't whether you understand this. You probably understood it before you ever clicked on this video. The question is whether understanding is enough to make you stop, even for a moment, and look at the structure you're living inside. Not with guilt, not with panic, just with clarity. Because the most dangerous financial position isn't being broke. It's being busy so perpetually, relentlessly busy surviving, that you mistake movement for progress, and never notice that the system you're running on was never designed to take you anywhere at all. It's 12:15 now. You're still doing math.